Well, howdy friends, Brian Flechsig of Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, and welcome back to another one of our fly fishing tutorials. I want to take a few minutes today to talk about the length of your leader. Yes, you have heard us talk a lot about leaders here at Mad River Outfitters in the Midwest Fly Fishing Schools, and it's my philosophy, as is many of us around here, that your leader is your second most important piece of gear. And it's arguably your most important piece of gear. Now this really flies in the face. We get phone calls and emails and folks that come in the shop and they say they were at such and such shop, or they were at one of the big box stores and the big box store told them that their leader doesn't matter. Or the such and such fly shop said you can use any tippet that you want. And that's just simply not true. It's just not true. Your leader, okay, your most important piece of gear is what? Your most important piece of gear is your fly, okay? That's what's going to attract the fish. That's what's going to get the fish's attention. That's what has the hook on it that's going to allow you to catch the fish, okay? And your second most important piece of gear is your leader. Your leader is what's going to deliver that fly to the target. It's going to allow that fly to behave in a lifelike manner and even enhance the way that fly behaves in the water if it's designed properly. And then it's going to provide a robust link between your fly line and your fly that allows you to land that fish. But let's face it, if you have the best fly in the world, and it's the exact fly that the fish wants to eat, but your leader is not correct, and your leader won't deliver, let's say number one, it won't deliver the fly to the target, well then what good is the world's greatest fly? I wouldn't even buy Swimmin' Jimmies if I didn't have the proper leader because I couldn't cast them, much less allow the fly to behave in a lifelike manner, and much less survive the fight of the fish. I'm actually here to tell you that despite what you've heard, read, or the big box stores tell you, your leader is your single most important piece of gear. And the fly fishing industry is not going to tell you this, friends. They're just not going to. I'm sorry, but Sage and Orvis and Scott, and it just go down the list. Let's not pick on anybody in particular. They're going to tell you that the rod is the most important piece of gear, of course, and so will a lot of fly shops. Then what's next? They're going to tell you that the reel is most important, and then they're going to tell you that this fancy vest or something is the most important. Why? I think we all know why. It's money. Okay, leaders are cheap. Buying and building proper leaders is fairly cheap compared to a $900 fly rod. But if you have a $900 fly rod and your leader sucks, well then you just wasted $900. I'm sorry, there's just no other way around it. And again, we're going to be talking a lot about this, but I wanted to talk a little bit today about leader length. We've had a lot of emails, a lot of calls here in the shop, and a lot of people that stop in, and they're a little bit confused by the length of a leader, okay? Episode 9 of Getting Started in Fly Fishing. I'm sure that episode is linked right there. If you have not seen it, please go watch it. It will explain a lot about Leaders 101, basic leaders for getting started in the sport. But of course, there is much more to learn, and again, we've got a lot coming at you. Stay tuned. In fall of 2021, we've got a whole series on leaders, and we're going to get really in depth, and it'll really make a lot of sense and make a big difference in your angling. But I wanted to touch on this here today on the length of a leader. Now, in that episode 9, for beginners, I suggested that you keep your leader approximately the same length as your rod. So if you have a 9-foot fly rod, which is going to be the most popular, if you have an 8.5-foot rod, you're going to use a 9-foot leader. If you have a 7.5, maybe 8-foot rod, you might step down to a 7.5-foot leader. Those are the two most popular lengths in basic leaders, okay? Now, there are times when you may want to go shorter on your leaders, and there's times when you may want to go longer. Let's also review and remember, this is very important because I have so many people that tell me that their fly shop told them to buy a package leader off the wall and then to add tippet. Well, remember that the word leader equals a tapered butt section plus a tippet. Okay, so when you buy a leader off the wall in a fly shop, it has tippet on it. If you add tippet to the front of it, you're theoretically double tippeting. That's typically not good, and it's going to be a pain to cast for the most part, depending on what kind of fly you have on it. Okay, so the most popular length of leader, the number one selling length of leader, is going to be a 9 foot. For a shorter rod, you may go down to a 7.5 foot leader. Okay, and I just mic'd it out with my micrometer here. Most of your package leaders have somewhere around 18 to 22 inches of tippet. Now, this is a 9 foot leader. A 7.5 foot leader will have proportionately less, maybe say 16 to 20 inches of tippet on the front of it. And then, of course, once you cut that tippet back, you've tied on a fly, you got caught in a tree, you tied on another fly, you're going to add some tippet. You're not typically going to add tippet right out of the package, with the exception of some of your, say, poly leaders or your furled leaders. These are just butt sections, and you are going to have to add tippet. But of course, our website is going to tell you how that works, and you can always pick up the phone and give us a call. There are a few exceptions. The airflow poly leaders, which I love, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about, and of course the furled leaders, which I also love for certain applications. These are just tapered butt sections. You're going to have to add tippet right out of the package, just to be clear. But I wanted to cover just a couple of simple rules about leader length. When would you go shorter on a leader? Well, first and foremost, you're going to go shorter on a sink tip or full sink fly line. For a sink tip or a full sink fly line, I'm typically going to fish a leader that's 4 to 5 foot in length. Rarely am I going to go up to 6 foot in length. And yes, we mostly build those, but these days you can buy them. There's a couple of companies, and of course you can find them at Mad River Outfitters, that do sell 4 foot tapered leaders designed for sink tips and sinking lines. But you're also going to go shorter on your leader if you're fishing a very heavy fly. If you're fishing a really, really big and wind-resistant fly, it's going to be much better to fish that on, say, let's say you have a 9 foot rod. I'm going to break that rule, and it's not a rule, it's a guideline. I'm going to go to a 6 to a 7.5 foot leader. Okay, that's why you see most good bass fishing leaders. Most bass leaders are typically shorter in length, 6 to 7.5 foot. Our best-selling bass leaders, the Rio Big Nasty, or the Cortland bass leaders, are 7.5 foot. The Rio Big Nasty are 6 foot. For the really big nasty flies, I might go to a 6 foot leader, and yes, still off of a floating fly line. So I got a lot of questions on how do you cast big flies, and it's amazing, or heavy flies like a Clouser minnow. It's amazing to me how many people are trying to cast a Clouser minnow with big fat lead eyes on it, and they're throwing it on a 9 or a 10 foot leader that's tapered down to 2x or 3x. You can't do that. There's no way you can ask that skinny little tippet to turn over a big fat fly, nor a long leader, okay? You want to get the energy to the fly as quickly as you can, and that tippet is going to have to be something like 13 thousandths or 12 thousandths. A lot of folks ask about articulated streamers, big heavy flies that are off the X chart In other words, they're bigger than size 2, maybe 1/0, 2/0, you're going to have to go off the X chart and you're fishing 13 thousandths, 12 thousandths, maybe even 14 thousandths. And your tippet, which is of course much thicker than 0X, okay? So when might you go longer on your leader? And when might you go longer on your tippet? Well, you might go longer if you're fishing for very spooky fish. If you're fishing dry flies, and it would primarily be dry flies, because they're up closer to the surface, they're going to be a little bit more spooky. You may want to keep your fly line and the butt section of the leader just further away from the fish. You're also going to taper over a longer distance, which can provide a more delicate presentation. I may also go longer if I'm dealing with tricky currents. If there's again, I'm fishing dry flies and or maybe nymphs. Of course, this is going to be non-contact fly fishing where I want the fly to float with the current. Going with a longer leader is going to help prevent drag. If I have a very short leader, the current's going to grab that leader quickly and pull the fly unnaturally. If I go with a longer leader, it can take longer for the currents to grab onto it, straighten out, and therefore pull the fly to act unnaturally, okay? I can also go longer on my leaders when I'm fishing light and delicate flies, obviously mostly dry flies. Again, I would never fish a 10 or a 12-foot leader with a big fat clouser minnow or a bass bug, but I might if I'm fishing a size 16, 18, or 20 dry fly. That's for sure, and it can be a lot of fun. So here's kind of a rule, and I'm sure we'll put this up. And remember this in regards to leader and tippet length. The lighter and less wind resistant the fly, the longer and lighter the leader may be. Underline may be. You can go longer on your leader and longer on your tippet if you're fishing a fly that's not very wind resistant and it's a very light and delicate fly, mostly in the case of dry flies. The heavier and more wind resistant the fly, the shorter and heavier the leader must be. Notice the difference. It may be longer if it's a light fly. It must be shorter and stiffer if the fly is more resistant or heavier, okay? So I hope that makes some sense. Like I said, we've got a lot more coming at you as far as leaders. You know, we've had our friends Flip Pallet involved. Kelly Gallup's going to be joining us and talking about his leaders. We're going to bring in everybody to talk about leaders and the importance of a leader in your fly fishing system, which again, the fly fishing industry, for some reason, just really doesn't want you to know or understand. I don't get it. So we're on a quest to teach you about the importance of leaders. So as usual, friends, if you have any questions whatsoever, it's always best to pick up the phone and give us a call here at the shop. Nothing beats a good old conversation, but if your phone's broken, you can send us an email. That's fine as well. And we respond to all emails, absolutely 100% of them that are sent here to the shop. And as always, we appreciate the support here at Mad River Outfitters. If you like our videos, think about showing some love and shopping on madriveroutfitters.com. So as always, be sure to subscribe because we've got a ton more coming at you about leaders. Smash that like button. That just makes us feel good. And stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming at you. If you like this video, hit subscribe. It helps out a lot. And check out these videos. We think you might like them too.